Seth David here from the world-famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, bringing to you part 5 of Extreme Bookmarking, how to manage all of these apps. And in this part of the series, we're talking about the brain, my personal favorite for this purpose. And of course, I'm going to show you why I believe that, why I feel that way, why I think the way that I do. You see, the brain is, again, in my opinion, the most powerful tool in terms of being able to create geometric linking, meaning we can sort of acknowledge the many different kinds of relationships things have to one another, right? For example, if I'm setting up a thought, which is what it's called in the brain, you'll see in a minute, called client X, and I want to be able to link all the apps that I'm going to use with that client, I only need to set those apps up once. In other words, I have an area in the brain for all my apps. And then under Client X, I can just quickly link to each of those apps, only the ones that I need for that particular client. And each of those thoughts for each of those apps will have the link to the generic login page for that app. Then, as I'm going to show you, we can also set up links directly to that client's area, to Client X's area within each of those apps. That's strictly up to you. It's a little extra work up front, but it gets you there and it gets the job done, and it gives you all the context you need. So let's take a look at my screen, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So over here, I'm in the brain. I've got it all set up. Client X. Here I'm putting it under a thought based on this article, this video. Yours would be probably under a client's area, which would be under your company somewhere in here, right? So here's Client X, and let's say I need Billbeez. So I'm just going to click here and drag to create. Initially it's looking to create a new thought, but as I type Billbeez, it's going to find that there's already a Billbeez in here. And I'm going to double click that and say, yeah, let's just link it to that existing one. Let's do the same thing for Google Drive. Okay, and sure enough, I have Google Drive. And let's do ClickUp. And as you can see, I have a lot of different ClickUp stuff, including all the course stuff that I did for my course on ClickUp. So I made it a point to name the thought that I need specifically just for the app, ClickUp-app, so I'm clear which one is the right place that I want to link to here. And we certainly want QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to bring that up, and again, I can tell which one is the root QuickBooks Online versus other things just based on how I've named things. I'm very careful about that kind of stuff, right? All right, so that's a good start. Now, if I click over here into Google Drive, this will, and the brain has its own browser. So I have a setting configured where it just opens up whatever link is associated with that thought, as long as there are no notes. So what I can do here is put in a note here saying this is the generic Google Drive, my Drive link, something like that, right? And any notes I'd want to make about Google Drive. Notice now that I'm in the Google Drive thought, I have it as a parent to my daily startup. I do that. I have a daily startup thought that you can see here. And above that, I put all the apps that I use every day. That's just how I chose to organize it. You might want to make them children of your daily startup. Daily startup is also configured, by the way, with a thought type of today. And that thought type is configured to make everything that's linked to it as, for this type, to give it that red and yellow, okay? And let's go back to Daily Startup, and that way I can get back to Google Drive. Now you're starting to see what I mean about the geometric linking. It's easy for me to move around here and get from one logical place to anything else that's logically connected to it. It's not so linear like most of the things we use, where it's just like folders and subfolders, right? It's not linear. Our brains don't work on a linear basis. They work on a geometric basis. And now I'll go back to Client X, because let's say I want to link specifically to Client X's folder. On my other screen, I've got the URL directly to Client X's folder. And what I'll do here is on the actual Client X thought, I'll click Attach, and I'll click Paste Web Link because I had already copied it there. And it's going to just read the metadata about that link. So I'm going to right-click this and rename it, and I'll call this Client X Google Drive folder. Okay, and this will work as long as I'm logged in, which is why I still want this connected, because this will take me to the, to the login if I need to. If I'm not logged in and I click on this, of course, it'll prompt me to log in also. But now let's say I want to link directly to this client's company in Billbeez. right? So in my other screen again, I'm just going to browse to kind of a sample company here that I have. And because that's the beauty of working in cloud apps is everything has a unique URL leading to that exact location. So again, I'll attach and paste web link. Okay, and we'll rename this and call it client. Well, let's start with Billbeez, right? So that's the first thing. This is the link to Billbeez for client X, right? So we know that, so that's clear. Okay. Then QuickBooks Online, I've played around with this. It's difficult to link directly to the company, even though each company has a company ID that lives in the URL. It doesn't live in every screen in the URL. So, plus if you're not logged in, it's just going to take you to the login prompt, and then when you log in, it's not going to take you to that company. Trust me, I've tested all of this. So for this one, we can just leave it, but we can certainly take this, login link, copy it back up to client X, and again I'll add that, paste web link. Okay, and we'll rename this. All right, QuickBooks on, login. Okay, and then ClickUp I can link directly to, a client's folder in ClickUp, let's say. So let me go there. First I'll click here. And one thing you can do when it's opening up that URL is I can click this little launcher and that'll pop it open in my Chrome browser, right? And that opened up on my other screen, so bear with me 1 second while I grab the link directly to client X in ClickUp. And then we're going to just click around here for a minute just so you can see how nice and easy this is once it's set up. Right now I'm trying to impress upon you how easy this is to set up for a particular client. Okay. And I'm in ClickUp on my other screen. I'm just going to browse to a sample client X folder and their accounting and bookkeeping list. And I'll copy that URL and I'll attach and paste web link. Okay, and there's ClickUp. Let's rename it and call it ClickUp client X, right? And so, because you don't want to change the links to these to be specific to this client, because these are going to get associated with other clients. That's the whole point, is to not have to have 6 different bookmarks for Billbeez for 6 different clients. You know what I mean? So here you can easily group them so that at close reach, I can click over to Billbeez, and it's going to bring me to the login page. Let me bring up here we go. There's client X's stuff. I'm going to close some of these tabs just so you can kind of get the full impact of how this works. So if I now click this launcher, I'm into Billbeez. I go over to ClickUp, right? I can click this launcher. I will be in whatever my home view is, whatever view in ClickUp I chose to link here, or I can go back to client X. And everything's a little slow. And I'll click here on ClickUp client X. Initially it launches it here. Click that launcher, boom, it launches us here. Alt tab, Command tab on a Mac to get back to the brain, right? And I can close this view. And the next thing I want is QuickBooks Online. So again, I can click here, click the launcher, Alt tab, back to the brain. Okay, and what have we got? I've got my new tab screen, Billbeez, ClickUp, and QuickBooks. Okay, and then Google Drive, right? So Google Drive, I want to go directly to that client's Google Drive folder since I set it up that way. And I don't have to click on this and click the launcher. I can actually right-click it and just choose Open, and this opens it in your default browser. But as you'll see in a second, this takes me right into client X's Google Drive folder. Here's QuickBooks Online, where it gives me my list of companies, so I would browse to client X there. And here's ClickUp. You'll notice I am, as it expands, getting straight down to client X's folder, accounting and bookkeeping. And here we are. This is kind of a client template that I use. And Billbeez, I just switched it over manually. If I use the brain and the specific link I set up in Billbeez, right click open, it should take me right to my sample, hey, it's Seth David Company and Billbeez. And sure enough, it did. So that, my friends, is how you can set up bookmarking in the brain and link things geometrically the way they're actually related in real life. Let me give you a couple of other quick examples of where this comes in handy throughout the day. Let's say while I'm working on something, I get a text or an email from somebody and they want to schedule a call with me. In the brain, I type schedule, and in 2 seconds it brings up my schedule once stuff, scheduling schedule once. I'll click on that. And here, if I close the launcher, I've got all the different links to my different booking calendars. So depending on why they want to set up the call with me, I can right-click and copy this link, then Alt-Tab, paste it into an email, shoot that off, and then click back. This is just like a browser's back option. Takes me back to where I was on Client X. Another point I want to make is that you may want to track all kinds of other information about this client, connected to this client. You could even keep documents in here if you want, and everything's synced to the cloud with the brain. So let's say you needed to further organize this. Very, very easy to do. What I would do is over here, I would create a new thought. If I do comma space, it makes it kind of a child of, and you'll see what it does. And I do apps. It links the naming so that by itself it looks like apps, but as you can see when I move my mouse over it, it says Client X apps, right? Now, watch this trick. What I can do next is I can click here on Client X apps, and if I hold down Shift while I click on any of these parent nodes, these are called nodes, click and drag, it will permanently move that thought under here. If I don't hold down Shift, it will have it linked in both places, right? But this is a really quick way that I can get these moved underneath Client X. Okay, and now Client X has a section for apps, and I can create whatever other child thoughts I need for any other sections I might want to describe about anything that I'm using the brain to track about Client X. So again, this one's my favorite for this use case because of the geometric linking capabilities and how dynamic this can be. It does take a little bit more work to get things set up, and it takes a little bit more work, frankly, to wrap your head around how to use this. But once you do, once it kind of clicks for you, the sort of genius of this, then most of the people that I know who have the experience I've had end up quickly falling in love with the brain and using it for this and a lot more other purposes and use cases. That, my friends, is part 5 on extreme bookmarking, how to use the brain to help you manage all of those apps.